before we get into our presentation tonight, so our fall plant and seed distribution is tomorrow from 4 to 6 at our office. Woo-hoo. Yay, exciting. Bethany and I are going to be out there all day tomorrow.
Sweating veggies.
Yeah. Our blood, sweat, and tears will go into dividing them. So if you have not signed up for a time yet, please do that. What time you're going to be picking up your stuff from 4 to 6. I sent that out. We will be dividing starting at 1. So if you want to come volunteer, ideally folks that have not volunteered for the program yet, that could come out and volunteer to get your volunteer quota hours in. And then we will also be distributing from 4 to 6. So if you want to help hand out plants and such, you may do that. Our next workshop, I just wanted to cover this real quick, is going to be the second Monday of the month next September because of Labor Day. So we are avoiding Labor Day. It'll be on September 9th. So if you come on Labor Day, it will be closed. We will not be here. The seed saving workshop that I kind of discussed earlier in the year is going to be September 28th. Don't have a location, but I will have that soon. So Chris Smith from the Utopian Seed Project out of Asheville will be coming to talk about seed saving. And that includes everything from backyard gardening, kind of regional seeds, planting for seed saving. He'll talk about how you have to isolate crops, things like that. If you want seeds to be saved that are true to their original variety, it's going to be a really great workshop. What else? Last year we trialed this thing called Superlatives. So at the end of the year, at the end of your potluck, we gave out little awards to people. And we had people submit their ideas for what they wanted to be awarded. So some of the things last year we had were like weirdest looking vegetable, which I think Graham won with her devil tomato. Yes, it had horns. We had largest pumpkin, which I think Bethany won. How much was your pumpkin, Bethany?
28 pounds.
28-pound pumpkin. So as you're harvesting all of your stuff right now, be looking for your weirdest vegetable, be looking for your largest vegetable, and anything else that you find funny or weird that you want to like submit and create a whole new category for. Not to brag, but we did have spray painted golden tomatoes that we handed out. So, you know, I know that's what everybody wants. And you do get a cute little certificate. Someone last year got a certificate for their kids being best pest pickers. There we go. And someone nominated their chickens for that as well. So really super fun. We will be doing that at the end of year potluck, which is going to be Monday, October 7th from 6 to 7:30. They'll be here at the Memorial Park Community Center, but it'll be down in the dining room. So we invite everyone to bring a dish to that. So fun. The food is like truly out of this world because we are all growing and picking and taking things from our garden. And then the last two things is we have our last 2 classes with Rachel Dean this month. That's going to be water bath, canning tomatoes, and cooking. So come to those.
Farmers Market Week.
Oh yes, thank you. And Bethany has an announcement.
Okay, I'll do it.
So it's National Farmers Market Week this week, guys, and at all the farmers market in the region, all 9 farmers markets in the region, at the info booth, there'll be fun stuff happening, totes being given away, temporary tattoos of vegetables and fruits, which is fun. And we're launching the Pharmacy Fit walking program, frequent walker. So right now, like if you walk a mile at the farmers market, you get $3 in tokens to spend on fruits and vegetables. It's like a family of 5 gets like $15. And so this week we're handing out punch cards. You get 8 punches in 8 weeks. You win a free stainless steel water bottle or a bento box. So yeah. Farmers Market Week, everybody.
Pretty cool thing. And what are the do you know the participating markets?
For Pharmacy Fit, it's
Yeah.
Kingsport, Irwin, Johnson County, Johnson City, Jonesboro,
Greenville, both markets in
both
Greenville.
Depot Street and Greenville Farmers.
Yeah. So I think the only one that's like kind of in this area that's not participating is Elizabethton Farmers Market.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
all the other ones are participating. And I mean, for me, I'm really excited about those tater tots. Yeah, so just,
Right.
you know, it's a good
Right.
thing.
There's actually a farmer's market at the VA on
Yes.
Thursdays too. It's a small one, but they can support as well.
So everyone go visit your local farmers markets and walk a mile and get some free produce and also some fun goodies.
Yeah, and support your local farmer.
And support your local farmer. Yeah.
The VA one, I want to say it's from 10 to 1.
Okay, so well, actually, before we get into this, I do want to say this is sponsored by TVA. Great. Okay. We recently got a TVA sponsorship, and so we're trying to work that into our spiel. All right, so fall gardening. These are some reasons I love fall gardening. You can grow a ton of food in the fall and even overwinter it. We have pretty mild winters here, which is really awesome. It's not as hot, which like, woo. It is pretty hot in here though. Fewer pests and diseases. This is also great. Less mosquitoes. I don't know if I would go as far as saying no mosquitoes. Maybe that was a little wishful thinking, but less mosquitoes. Weeds don't grow as much, which is awesome. And it's just like a really great time to grow food. I actually kind of prefer fall gardening over spring gardening myself. So here are some things that we can plant in August. As you know, we sent out the fall plant order form, so all these things are generally on the list. Some other things that you could grow real quick for the summer is bush beans, edamame, summer squash, zucchini, also cucumbers. You could probably get another round of these in if you really want some more summer crops. So just kind of pick and choose what you're wanting to do here. Some harvest tips for August. These are some things that are coming out of the ground in August. So some people may have already picked their onions and potatoes. I have, and that's okay. But sometimes onions are getting ready, so their tops will actually fall over. Their little necks will fall over when they're ready to be harvested, and they'll start to dry out. Potatoes are ready when the tops die back, and then you will wait about 1 to 2 weeks to dig, and that'll help develop a nice thick skin for your potatoes, so they're easier to store for a longer period of time. They're not going to store probably all winter, but you can probably get a good 2 to 3 months out of them, maybe longer if they're in like ideal conditions. Your shorter season winter squash, so acorn, delicata, spaghetti, those can all be harvested when the fruit darkens in color. It feels kind of firm, and it has a dark colored moon where the squash rests on the ground. So where it touches the soil, it'll have this dark colored moon. I would also recommend that depending on what variety you're growing, you Google what that looks like when it's mature and look for signs. It's hard for me to describe that, but it's good to just see specifically with what variety you're growing, what it should look like when it's mature. So that's a really great way to kind of figure it out as well. Melons, so cantaloupe will actually slip from the vine. So basically where the cantaloupe has its little stem that goes to the vine, you can gently push on that with your finger. And if it comes loose, then it's ready to be harvested. Some will actually slip off the vine on their own if they're really ready to be harvested. So you want to be going out there probably every week and just checking. And then watermelon should have where it needs the stem goes into the vine, there will be a little curly cue right there. And once that dries up completely, then you'll know that that's when it's ready to harvest. You can also pair that with looking for a dark colored moon on the bottom, much like the squash. So sometimes, and it really depends on the variety, but sometimes that looks like dark yellow or almost even orange. There's also a lot of other like folk signs of when to tell if your watermelon's ready. I don't personally know that I trust that when I knock on the watermelon, I'm hearing the right sound, but that is a thing as well. So some of your more long season crops are winter squash, sweet potatoes, and popcorn. So these are ones you're going to want to wait for post-August, but ideally harvest definitely harvest, I should say, before frost. So butternut and pumpkins are likely not ready until September. Butternut, I don't know if I have this on here, but let me check. Nope. Okay. Butternut, they will get like a kind of dark tan color to them. They won't have any green at the top. And one way you can test butternut is with your fingernail. So you actually push your fingernail into the outside of the squash. And if you're able to pierce through it, it's not ready yet. You should not be able to pierce through it with your fingernail. And once you're able to, if you're not able to pierce through it, then it's telling you it's ready. Pumpkins will be orange or however, what color they're supposed to be. And they'll actually start to like sound a bit hollow inside when you knock on them. But also just Google, maybe Google some like maturity, see what your specific variety you're looking for in its uniformity of color. Sweet potatoes, you want to hold off until late September or October for harvest. So basically, if you can, as long as you can before frost, that'll give them the best chance of having really big tubers. But also pay attention to pests and things too. I know gardeners in the past have left them in the ground too long and then like voles have gotten them. So kind of use your best judgment to when you want to get out, but generally no earlier than late September, early October. And before frost, because frost will ruin your harvest. And then popcorn, you want to wait until the husks are super dry. Late September at the. Okay. There's a pest alert. Yeah. Carrots. From the spring. Yeah, so carrots actually can stay in the ground for a super long time. You want to wait until you can see their little heads pop up above the soil. And that's kind of telling you that they're ready. If you have them planted really thickly together, then you can actually be pulling carrots and still waiting for others to mature. Carrots are some things that sometimes take a really, really long time, and it kind of just depends on your soil. So we will be handing out carrots again in the fall. So those will sometimes overwinter. So yeah, don't be afraid to just keep them in the ground. So pickle worms, these fun little creatures up here, they will fly up from Florida and usually hit East Tennessee in August. These will affect your winter squash. I know, Florida, gosh. They will lay their eggs on summer and winter squash plants, and then the larva will actually chew into the sides of flowers, and then when they're larger, burrow into the fruits. So just be on the lookout for holes in your winter squash plants. You can cut off like infected parts and get rid of them, or like put them in soapy water or whatever. But you can also treat them with BT and spinosad. So this is good if you are spraying the flowers. It may not really affect if they're in the fruits, but you can always cut off the pieces that they burrow into in the fruits, and then the stuff that they haven't touched. But ideally, you're catching them before they get to your fruits, ideally.
That's the creature?
Yes. Yeah. So fun. But for the most part, pests are starting to wind down at this point. Okay, so I think most of you guys have done this from your garden visits, but if you haven't, you want to remove your spring brassicas ASAP before you're putting in your fall brassicas. And this is to give your plants and your garden a little bit of a break from the pests that tend to affect brassicas. You can also plan to prune your cane fruits. So raspberries, blackberries, any of the other bramble fruits that you have in August. And then I recommend planning out a fall garden and where you're going to plant cover crops. We'll talk about cover crops in a hot sec, but sometimes it's kind of like you just kind of have to make decisions on what you want to plant and what you want to prioritize and things. So it's sometimes good to just create another small garden plan. these are some things we're gonna cover. And so fall gardening concerns, actually, I think I have those slides for each of these, so. Yeah. Okay, so the first frost usually occurs in this area between October 15th and November 15th. Generally, it's in late October, which means we have 55 to 85 days until then. So we have a fair amount of time for your summer crops to still be growing and producing a bunch. We've definitely had peppers and tomatoes last that long until late October, and you're like, I literally, if I have to look at another tomato, I'm gonna die. But that is an option. Like I mentioned earlier, you can plant summer crops with fast maturity dates. So any of those are good. But you want to check the seed packet or, check the book that we gave you or whatever for varieties and just make sure that they're days to arrive within that window, days to maturity. So now we can start planting cool season crops. So that includes leafy greens, brassicas, root veg, all the things. In this early part of growing, you're going to want to keep them super well watered because it's obviously still very hot outside. And that will help with keeping their temps cooler in the soil, and also making sure they get enough water to survive. A lot of cool hardy crops often get sweeter after frost. So don't be afraid of growing like cool crops and be like, oh no, I have to get them out of the ground before frost because they're fine with frost. So anything that we're handing out tomorrow are good with frost. They don't necessarily need to be covered. They're good to grow. But then, some are more hardy than others. Some might die with a super deep freeze. So just, later in the winter, be aware, like things like kale are super hardy and they can last all winter if you let them. But some things are going to die off. Like if we have sub-zero temperatures, probably everything's going to die, unless you have some row cover or something. But there's this is a list. I'll send this presentation out, but it's just a resource of some cold hardy crops, and learning more about them. So day length. So our day length starts dipping below 10 hours from December 10th to January 15th. So ideally your frost hardy crops that you're planting in August are mature by then. And so you don't necessarily have to worry about it. But if you are putting things into the ground later than what we hand out, just be aware of that, that they could be more susceptible to dying if they're not fully established.
That was open it for you.
Emily, can you mute anybody that is off mute? And then, yeah, so most overwinter crops will begin to bolt, go to flower by March. And although not always, because some people had chard and kale that overwintered and were still fine into spring, but for the most part. So here's where you kind of want to make some decisions. So I think the best advice is, what do you want to be eating in November? If you want to be eating more fall crops, then maybe takes out some of your summer stuff now so you can make room for fall plants. If you want to be eating more summer crops, and you really want beans, you really want cucumbers, you want to do more pickling, you want to do more sauce making, maybe you leave your stuff in and plant less fall things. It really just depends on what you want to be eating. So think about that. But you can draw up another garden plan and then just make choices based off of what you personally like to eat and want to be eating or want to store or all those things. So curing storage crops. So I think a lot of people think like, okay, sweet potatoes are storage crops. Potatoes you can store. There's actually a bunch of other things that can be stored. So this list at the bottom is a pretty basic list of a lot of things that can be stored. Winter squash stores super well over the winter. I actually still have some butternut squash that I grew last year that I ate like a few weeks ago, and it was still okay. So I'm just saying, like, sometimes if you're taking off the vine at the right time and you're storing it in a good place. It can last for a really long time. This I will send out, but this has like this Johnny Seeds link has like a full list of all of the different ways that like you can store things and what they prefer. So advice for like cold, what needs to be stored cold and dry, what needs to be stored cold and moist, what needs to be stored cool and dry and cool and moist. So there are differences there. I'm not going to go through all of them right now because it would take forever, but it is like a big thing if you're trying to utilize just storing instead of freezing and taking up a lot of freezer space or having to go through the process of like really in-depth canning or things like that. There are things that you can store just as is.
Do you see any water in it?
So cover crops. This is something that we really super promote in this program. Who all knows what a cover crop is or has heard of cover crops? So most people, okay. Okay, cool. So cover crops are great because they are really wonderful ways to replenish your soil, keep living roots in the soil. They provide cover for your soil over the winter, so you're not creating space for weeds to grow. They will prevent erosion. Some cover crops will go so deep that they actually break through compacted soil, like daikon radish will grow up to 3 feet in the ground and just break through all that compacted soil. They'll increase organic matter. So, you know, as they break down or even as they release nutrients back into the soil, they're creating more organic matter. They'll increase soil life and diversity. So all those fun little microorganisms that live in your soil and microbes, they really promote that diversity. And they suppress weeds. So really keeping weeds out of your garden, keeping your soil covered. I cannot emphasize that enough. Keep your soil covered. And even if you're not going with cover crops, put thick layers of mulch down or tarps or something so that you're not promoting that weed growth. Rosie?
Is there like a cutoff date for when you want to plant a cover crop, or is it?
I will go over that.
Thank you.
So these are types of cover crops. So we have grasses, legumes, brassicas, and non-legume broadleaves. This is just a list, a more kind of extensive list of things that you might find. I'm going to go through each of these, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, but this is something to refer back to if you would like. So grasses tend to make up 40 to 90% of any mix. They're great for having deep roots that prevent nutrient runoff and erosion. They decompose a lot quicker. It's kind of like adding, you know, grass clippings or straw on top of your soil. You're providing cover crops, you're letting them grow, and then you're tarping them off and they're rotting into your soil and creating just like amazing good soil. They'll grow quickly. We hand out rye, I believe, in our mix. But at the bottom are other examples of things that you could use. And then rye and sorghum are allelopathic, meaning that they contain chemicals that can prevent weed seeds from germinating. So that's something handy dandy to know. And we will be handing out in our mix rye. So heavily recommend you use some. Legumes tend to be 10 to 40% in a mix. And I think we do a pretty healthy mixture of all of these, but depending on how you want to benefit your soil, you can in future years make up your own mixes. There's a lot of great places. Well, let's see, Wolf Farm and Natural Elements in Abingdon. They sell all of these things that I'm talking about. And we often make trips up there. So, you know, if we, in future years, you can be like, hey, I want to order this thing, and we might be able to pick it up for you. Also, Chris with Possum Bottom goes up there a bunch too. So, but these fix nitrogen and increase soil fertility. They decompose to provide soil organic matter. Basically, all of these will decompose to provide organic matter. So some of the things are Austrian winter pea, clovers, hairy vetch for the winter. For spring, you can do field peas, and summer, soybeans, sun hemp, or cowpeas. We, I believe, are handing out Austrian winter pea in our mix this year. And then we've got brassicas, daikon radish, yay, love them. They can grow up to 3 feet long, like I was saying. This is an example. They get really deep, and especially if you haven't like established your walking bed or walking paths and beds, and you've compacted the soil over time, that can help break that up. Or if you're going from tilling that maybe has a hard pan, it'd be good to break up that with some radish. Brassicas like mustard can be used as a natural soil fumigant to kill nematodes. Luckily, we don't have a whole lot of issue with nematodes in East Tennessee. But if you did discover that you were having those issues, that could be a great solution. But yes, they can harbor pests and disease, so consider using them in a crop rotation and not in the same place every year. And then non-legume broadleaf. So this is mainly buckwheat. This is a great summer cover crop. If you've planted stuff in the spring and then you have like a gap in between, they'd be great to be planted in the summer. They can fill about a 4 to 6 week period of having no crops. They grow really quickly. The flowers attract pollinators, which is great to attract pollinators to your garden. And they're pretty easy to mow down and kill. You could also do, and Jacqueline, you asked me this at your garden visit, and I didn't remember.
Yeah.
So you could also do flax, sunflowers, marigolds, or chicory. So those could also be options if you didn't want to do buckwheat. So this is our fall cover crop mix. We will be handing this out at the next workshop on September 9th, as well as row cover, which we will discuss all of those things. All the row cover stuff at the next workshop. But row cover is used as a way to kind of frost protect your summer crops if you want to give them a little bit more life, or your fall crops in deeper freezer. So we hand out 50% rye, 30% Austrian winter pea, 15% crimson clover, and 5% daikon radish. You want to plant in September for the maximum benefits. However, I realize that we are planting fall gardens, so you may not have space. That's okay. If you have spots that you are not going to be using for fall crops, or you're taking summer crops out of and you're not going to be replanting in, you could put cover crop in those places. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing situation. And then as those other crops come out in later fall, then you can plant this. And I don't think daikon radish will germinate probably at that point, but you'd have a really good chance of rye. Rye will pretty much germinate until December. So some of the other things will probably germinate as well. But yeah.
And you can do this in any bed size, right? This isn't just for the big beds, like a 3x2 or something like it.
No, yeah, you can put it anywhere. Yeah. I was at Jacqueline's garden visit, and she had buckwheat in a little tiny little space that she just had open. So you can put them anywhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Found it. Then like they really thrive when I get to spring. Should I be killing them before that?
Yes. Good question. Graham asked if she should be killing them before spring. And yes, once you start hitting warm weather, you want to be killing them off, because they will go to seed and then they'll get everywhere. So probably about 3 to 4 weeks before you're ready to plant, you want to be tarping them. You can mow them down really short and then tarp them, or some people like crimp them or like walk on them. I probably wouldn't walk on them, but some people do that. But yeah, I found luck with just cutting them super short and then tarping them and then planting right into that residue. But yeah, you want to make sure that you are catching them before they go to seed, so that they don't get everywhere in your garden.
Say like March.
I would just pay attention to what the weather is doing and when you're going to be planting. So yeah, I mean, March is probably around the time, even February if you're planting some earlier spring stuff. Yeah. Any other questions online?
to ask you about spring cover crop. Do you have one that you like for spring? Because I feel like on my fall beds, I'll likely just do cover crop in spring for those.
Yeah, so, we have had people had blocked with field peas. Which is a good option. For the people on Zoom for, a spring cover crop. Yeah. So I recommend probably.
We did have a question online.
Yeah,
First one is, will these slides be sent out if people want to consult them after?
sorry. The slides, yes, they will be sent out.
Okay, and the second question is if we wanted to do our own cover crop mixes, you know, like 30% this, 10% this, do you know if that's best or if it makes a difference if we would do it by volume or if we would do it like a tablespoon of this versus a tablespoon of that or by weight?
I don't think it matters. You just want to look at what parts of the cover crops you're looking to add benefit to your soil. So the main thing is going to be like whether you're wanting to plant more grass or legumes or things like that. I think if you do it by like tablespoon or weight, you're still coming out with the same percentages, right? Well, I guess in my head, okay, explain that to me then. Someone help me.
Something maybe denser.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay. I would do some research and just see what the percentages mean. I see. Yeah, it's by volume.
Oh.
Yeah, volume. Yeah, sorry. I was not computing that at all. Okay, sorry. I thought in my head, I was thinking like how you would like add them together. And I was like, I don't think that would matter, but okay, got it. Yes, I think we measure by volume.
How
Okay.
much of the fall cover crop are you handing out? I'm curious if I need enough or if I need to.
You're probably gonna need to order more. Just knowing the size of your garden. I think we give out like a pound each or something. So I have to double check that, but we might have extra, but probably not enough to cover your garden. Yeah, but yeah. Do I broadcast it? Yes, you would broadcast it. Yeah, you don't have to like put it in little holes or anything. You can just broadcast it on the soil, take a rake and just kind of cover it a little bit, and then it should germinate and grow. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna move on. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna move on. So I just wanted to briefly cover this. So this is just some of the topics we're gonna cover next session. We're gonna talk about season extension. We're gonna talk about building low tunnels for frost protection. We already handed out the hoops. And so we'll just be handing out the row cover, but we'll talk about how to construct those and we'll talk about planting garlic. Garlic will not be distributed probably until that end of year potluck in October. It comes in normally end of September or early October. And then it can be planted in October. We'll talk about harvesting and curing sweet potatoes, late fall garden chores, and then if we have time, we might throw in some crop rotation resources and plans for y'all, because I've heard quite a bit of interest in that in our garden business. So, okay. So, we're gonna do a group activity for soil health, learning about soil health. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, it looks like online, Emily, 5 groups would just be fine. So we're gonna split into 5 groups, in person and online. Each group will have 20 minutes, and I'll hand out a scenario. That these are things that I have specifically noted from garden visits in July that people have had issues with. Or just over years, common garden issues in the garden, maybe soil related, maybe not, maybe closely related. Emily's gonna split folks into groups online and we're gonna do it. So after the 20 minutes are up, we're gonna discuss, we're gonna do share outs. So if folks want to do, elect someone in your group to be a speaker that's gonna share out, or if you wanna elect folks that are gonna note take or whatever. I've got, do you wanna help me?
Sure.
I've got notepads or index cards. We'll pass out a few of both, and then your scenario. So, do you guys want to split yourself into 5 equal groups, or do you want me to count? Okay, so yeah, you guys, you 4, and then you 4 back there, and then you 5 over here.
And Rosie, make me the host or co-host so I can make the breakout rooms.
Oh, yes, yes. I didn't see that earlier. There you go. You should be good.
Or
There have to be the speaker, right? So, okay. Dark here. Much bigger than the size of the plant. They have some fruit, but not a lot. It's like they're just doing a lot.
Hey, y'all who are still hanging out online. Sorry, it's showing me you're in room 4, but I don't know how to resend you that link. Um, let's see. This is a limit to my Zoom knowledge. I wonder if those of us who are here, we can kind of do this another way. Okay, so Kamal and the Andersons. Up in the chat. Okay, up in the chat, there is a link to the Jamboards, and I want y'all to be able to see those. I don't know if, and I'll text it here again. So Rosie created this online document of a Jamboard in Google. And if you go to the document, then everybody can type at the same time to try and solve the soil health mystery, which is kind of a fun activity. So these are real life kind of soil or garden problems. And in the groups, we're trying to solve them together. So if you go to the Jamboard link that just popped up in chat, you can see that there's kind of 5 different slides or 5 different scenarios. And when you go to that, I think most everybody here I assigned a room number 4, and I don't know what happened. I don't know. And I don't know how to make that breakout link come by again. And I was going to try and like kick you out of a breakout room and join again, but I don't know how to do that. So if you head to that Jamboard link and open it up, let's all here look at room number 4. Click out here on number 4. Is that working for everybody? And I think we can just unmute ourselves and talk here. And if we're talking in the main room, maybe Rosie can lower the speaker volume in there. So the Jamboard activity for room number 4 or slide number 4, you can see up at the top banner, it says here's scenario number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So scenario number 4 is has to do with problems during the summer. So could I prevail on someone here to read that number 4 out loud if you're seeing that? Who would like to come off?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, that's scenario 4. During the summer, this gardener's plant have grown big and beautiful with full lush leaves but no fruits. At this time, they should be seeing fruit. They don't see any sign of pest or disease. The plant look healthy despite not producing any fruit. The gardener is located in the middle of their grass lawn. The garden is located in the middle of their grass lawn, and there are not any other flowering plants nearby. The area has experienced several weeks of hot weather, with temperature regularly getting around over 90 Fahrenheit. There has been little rain through the gardener. Though the gardener is watering regularly, the soil is made of heavy clay and they are not using any mulch or landscape fabric. What are potential problems and solutions?
Aha. Is anybody having this problem? Big, healthy, lush green leaves, but no flowering and no fruit.
So I think they're lacking pollinators. It says there's no flowering around, and the plants are really beautifully, but there's nothing happening. So I think they're lacking pollinators. They should be planting some marigolds or something to attract pollinators to be able to get some fruit.
Okay. We have if you have flowers but no fruit, right? Our gardens don't exist in a vacuum.
And then
Um,
perhaps they should be mulching too. If there have been really high temperatures and they've been having to water the garden, they should put some mulch down to conserve the humidity on the soil.
I think their soil is lacking compost or like organic matter.
I remember reading on some plants, don't put too much nitrogen because if you fertilize with a lot of nitrogen, you'll end up with all these green leaves, but you actually won't get a lot of flowers or fruit. I don't think that's all kinds of plants, but I think that soils could have an imbalance of like nitrogen or phosphorus or potassium. And so I would recommend also that they do a soil test when they do their garden, because if their garden right doesn't have compost or enough phosphorus or potassium, then the plants won't have enough nutrients to even get flowers. And then they won't have enough nutrients to also to fruit. They'll just have really healthy leaves. Yeah. Does anybody think that it's key here? And really, I don't know the answer. I'm just sharing too. Why do you think it matters if she added for a reason that's located right in the middle of their lawn? Oh, no other flowering plants nearby. Do you think that's a pollinator clue?
Um, So how does the location matter?
Yeah, I was wondering that too. If that's kind of important that it's in the middle of their grass lawn with no other flowering plants nearby.
Yeah, so obviously there are no pollinators to pollinate the plant,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe if the plant is lush green, then there is no issue with sun,
Right.
like they are getting proper sun that shows. So can we discuss our scenario?
Yeah, well, so here, let me recap what we got so far. And what can someone volunteer to give our recommendations when we go back to the main room? Who would like to be the brave voice to speak over the speaker? Kamal, how about you since you read um our problem
Yeah,
for us?
sure.
Okay. Yeah.
I can go ahead and do that.
Okay, so I have, well, if it's not planted near any pollinators, then plant some more flowers to attract pollinators, to make fruit, get mulching in to retain water in the soil and add some compost to get more nutrients and also the more organic matter will retain more water. And I added the NPK imbalance possibility.
Okay.
Heavy
So,
clay. Yeah.
so we have to go back to the video call and discuss it when Rosie asks.
Yes. I forget what time. I think it's really only for a couple more minutes. Oh, she told me here. Yes. So at a given time, I'm supposed to close
Mhm.
all the boards and we'll go back to the main group.
Okay.
And that's going to be at 6:58. So just in 1 or 2 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Any of this, like other people's problems or other garden problems you're having that you want to talk about with our little group here?
My munching peppers, nothing grew in that plant.
Mm.
Snacking peppers, nothing
Mhm.
grew in that plant. I have a
Any
lot of
flowers?
no. I have a lot of jalapenos, bell peppers next to it, beans also, but only those snacking peppers. They are growing good, but no flowers, no fruit.
Hmm.
Same with us, actually.
So interesting. So everybody, yeah. I don't know why they wouldn't even be flowering, but peppers can take a long time here in this region. Um, like, has anybody grown peppers like this before and had success?
No, this is my first year.
Okay. Sometimes they can take a long time. Like sometimes in my garden, if I don't get in peppers until June or July, I really won't get any until September. It
Oh,
can just take a long time. And maybe the jalapeno variety that we got was a faster maturing variety.
so I don't know how it matters, but I am growing bell pepper in a like a growing bag and in raised bed as well. So the one I grew in growing bag, I planted it very late, like in June, in the start of June, and that plant is having like 5 bell peppers in it. But the one that I am growing in raised bed, they only have one on each.
Mm,
So the soil is same
yeah.
and the location is same, but I don't know. Maybe I planted my bell peppers in raised bed too close. They're not getting enough nutrition, something like that.
Mm-hmm. If you can water it, you could get a little more sprinkle. I have a little granular fertilizer. Sometimes this time during the season, you can put a little more compost it again or mulch it again with some more moo poo or a little granular fertilizer to give it a little
I
more
so
nutrient.
my fish fertilizer, I got finished with it. So I put fish fertilizer, some bone meal in my plants
Mhm.
earlier. Yeah, I was thinking like I might repeat like some. Do we need to put like bone meal when we plant our fall garden again?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think the bone meal is a slower acting nutrient to the soil. It takes it longer to break down. What's in bone meal? Is that a potassium or a phosphorus one that's higher? Or is that
Yeah,
nitrogen?
actually, I was having blossom rot in my tomatoes and in my zucchini, so that's why I added
Mm-hmm.
bone meal.
Good, good. Yeah.
You wanna
I mean,
start bringing folks
yeah.
back?
Let's ask Rosie that question, Kamal, about fertilizing when we plant in the fall.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and close the breakout rooms and everybody will rejoin us. And hopefully it's not too early. Okay. Thanks for thinking through that problem.
Thank you.
And thanks for your patience on trying to work through the breakout room stuff.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna bring it back in.
It takes nitrogen, so do you carry
All right. How you guys feeling? Feeling pretty confident with your answers? Yeah? Great, I love to hear that.
Very
means you've
pleased
learned-
that we know something.
Yes, that's great. You know, that means that we've been doing something right. So I figure we will go through and kind of each group can share. The folks online had the same prompts, so we have 2 groups for each. So I'm gonna kind of alternate back and forth. So group 1 will share, and then we'll ask the online folks if they had anything different that they came up with, and then we'll go back and forth that way. So, group 1. Yes, you guys. All right, do you want me to read the scenario? Because then student people. Okay, scenario 1. This gardener lives in East Tennessee and has just started a new garden in their backyard. They tilled their plot in the spring, and the soil is a dark red clay color, which often clumps together. They put their plants in single rows with lots of bare soil space to walk between each row. They frequently step between rows and around plants as they weed and care for their garden. As the weather turned hot in the summer, they've noticed that their garden soil is often cracking even shortly after a big rain. They also find that when they water their vegetables, water pools and does not soak into the soil easily. What are potential problems and ways to fix this? What'd you come up with? What were your potential problems and your we'll do problems first.
Okay, well, the problem might be walking too close to the plants and pounding the ground down, as well as not enough organic matter.
Yep, so problems were walking on the planting beds, compaction, and not enough organic matter. Okay. What are your solutions?
Lots of mulch. Well, first mixing in organic matter, compost, manure, possibly mounding around the plants, and definitely not walking, having paths in between to stick with. Using mulch on top.
Instead of going like single rows, put in like 3 or 4 foot wide, whether it's a raised bed or not a raised bed, with a path in between. Yeah, so that they're not.
Okay.
That's okay.
So they said,
Cover crop in the fall.
okay, yeah, adding organic matter, putting your beds a little further apart so you have walking rows, mulching. I feel like I'm missing something else.
Mounding.
Mounding around the plants, potentially to help with that. Okay. Group 1 online. Did you guys have different interpretation than that? Is there a spokesperson from group 1 that wants to talk?
We see somebody.
That's Emily.
Emily.
She's with ARCD.
Hi, Emily.
No, I'll have to prevail upon our online folks. I see. Thank you, Cheyenne, for that presenter. They've said those exact same things.
Okay. So what I have written down is compaction, yes. Erosion, another issue that you see that often comes from compaction. Potentially it could have been caused by if there was, and there's just, I just want a blanket statement. There are so many different things that this could be. And that was there's a reason for that. That is intentional, that it was vague and that you could have lots of different things. And I want to say you guys are correct. That is true. And a big part of that is low organic matter in your soil and bare soils. So always be covering your soils and always be adding organic matter. But also could be coming from having a hard pan in your soil from tilling. So if folks have tilled for a few seasons or always, they create a hard pan under the soil, which means that roots have a hard time breaking through, and it also means that water is not draining, and so it's pooling up on the surface. So great, awesome. All right, yeah, next one, group 2.
So that's us. Do you want to read the?
Sure, I'll read it. Okay. In May, the gardener planted all of their summer crops. In July, the plants are alive but have not grown much bigger than the size they were when they planted. They have some fruit, but not a lot. It seems like they are just barely staying alive, looking spindly, and many of the lower leaves are pale green or even yellowing. The gardener has added fertilizer multiple times, but to no avail, and they are watering regularly, but not too much. What are possible problems and solutions?
So we thought this was kind of a hard one, right? Because clearly they fertilize, clearly they're on top of the watering. So we suspect there may be heavy soil, right? That's just preventing
Heavy
root
soil,
growth.
yeah.
It's possible that they are not getting ample sunlight because
Mhm.
they're not greening up the way that they should.
Yeah.
Or possibly it was planted too early for the variety of the thing and it just didn't get established early on.
Right.
So our possible solutions were addressing the soil, like adding mulch, making sure to cover crop over the next season to try to break up whatever is going on under the ground. And potentially in the next season, rotating your
Mhm.
crops to a different space where either they get more sunlight or there's
Yeah.
different soil conditions.
Okay, did you guys hear that online pretty well? Good, okay, good. Group 2 online, did you guys have anything different or anything to add?
We also talked about the heavy soil. I mean, East Tennessee is clay, so everything's waterlogged and pretty acidic. So maybe having a soil test performed in the spring so that they can adjust the way that they need to next spring. Lee suggested hoeing for aeration. That's what she said she does around her plants, and it really helps with waterlogging. Remove the yellow leaves, and I see call Rosie like 5 times.
Well, ideally, no, okay. So yeah, you guys kind of thought the same thing. Let me ask you all a question. This can be a question to the group. What else could you think of other than heavy soils? When thinking about soil, especially in East Tennessee. Jacqueline said pH. So this is a classic sign of something with a pH imbalance. So this is how plants grow when there is a pH imbalance in the soil. And that could mean in East Tennessee, it's most likely that your pH is too low and you need to add lime to your soil. Another issue, especially if you see that your plants are small. I know the sunlight was good. If your plants aren't getting enough sunlight, they are going to be spindly. They are going to be like, not super happy. There could be yellowing of leaves. Another thing is if you're seeing the leaves on your plant are yellow and they start to curl a bit and they're not very big, it could also be herbicide drift. So it's not super common, but Sue had a thought with some of her stuff that she might have some herbicide drift because the leaves are curly, and those will stay small. And that doesn't mean that you're spraying herbicides, but it could mean that your neighbor's spraying herbicides and that herbicide has drifted over into your yard. And so you can kind of identify that by the way that the leaves curl. But for this one, the main thing would be probably pH imbalance where you have to add lime. So, but I thought those were great answers. That was really, really good thinking. My steps for a solution would be to ideally get a soil test done. First thing, you see that your plants are not growing very well, get a soil test done. That will be able to tell you if you have a pH imbalance or, I thought Kevin came in, but did he leave again?
No.
Okay, well, Kevin did a soil test and found out that his beds were super low in nitrogen. And so he needed to add a bunch of nitrogen to his beds to help with his plant growth. So, and then also add organic and mulch, help with, insulating that soil, adding to the organic matter, adding to the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the potassium. I would also recommend if you find that your soil is very imbalanced and you have to add so much lime that it might not soak in right in that season, consider constructing a raised bed or container gardening while you wait for your soil to rectify itself. So you can still grow food, but you're just waiting until you can improve your soil a little bit. But
Can I ask a quick question?
yeah,
Talking about the pH and things like that, so I know you can send off samples to Nashville. I couldn't wait that long. So, I went and bought Evergreen's most expensive test kit. How reliable are those pH strips?
not super reliable.
Really?
No,
Same
they're
way.
not gonna give you the breakdown that you kind of need for your soil. I would recommend going through extension, and it doesn't take that long. They can get it back in a few days. So, yeah,
Right now.
I know. But do it through Washington County and it'll take not that long.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, group 3. All right, I'll read group 3. Okay, this gardener has a new garden plot that used to be a lawn that they tilled up in the spring. They hilled up 30-inch beds of soil with added aged horse manure and have planted their crops in blocks in the beds. While their crops are spaced well, they have not otherwise covered their soil or walking paths with anything. They've been struggling since day one with weeds and grass in their garden. In July, they go away for vacation for a week, and when they come back, their entire garden has been taken over by weeds and grass. Now their plants are being choked out. What causes this, and how can they fix this problem in future years?
This scenario sounded real familiar.
It's probably familiar for a lot of people.
So I just thought, well, if I went back and did it all again, but
Yeah.
okay, we thought initially they could have tarped the plot before bringing in the soil and that manure, just to get rid of, kill some of those weed seeds. Or lasagna gardening, putting down cardboard first and then the mounds. And then potentially covering the beds with like a black plastic and planting into that. Or mulching with hay or straw or black grass clippings. Or even cover cropping and then planting directly into the cover crops. And then on the pathways, either plastic and then some type of like wood chip, or doing a living pathway with like a clover or a creeping thyme.
Yeah. Those are great options. Group 3 online, what'd you guys come up with?
So we all had pretty much the same answer, mainly cover the soil, mulch, use some kind of fabric or cardboard or straw or grass clippings, whatever you can get. I think the only thing we had that might be slightly different was planting your crops closer together so they themselves can shade out and try to prevent weed pressure. I think that's all we had that is slightly different. And
Okay.
that's about it.
Cool, yeah, those are good. Obviously the problem is uncovered soil, right? We don't want to keep our soil uncovered. I think making sure, going off what the online group just said, if you're planting your stuff closer together, making sure they still have enough room for airflow so that diseases aren't super prevalent in your soil. I will also mention that in this scenario, we specifically mentioned horse manure. Horse manure in particular can be full of weed seeds. That's very satisfying to hear. And the tillage also encourages like invasive grasses and things like that. So specifically Bermuda and Johnson grasses, which are just so hard to get out of. So yes, I think you guys provided great solutions. Tarping, always a great option. Cover crop, putting cover crop in. We talked about this through winter helps, prevent weeds from growing. Some even more intentionally than others. Going no-till, doing really heavy mulching. Yeah, all of those are great. Yeah. and a note about the manure, just making sure that that is well aged before you're adding it on to your garden.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it can be well aged, but if it doesn't, I think you and I even talked about this, it doesn't reach a certain temperature, those weeds do not
Right.
be pulled up. So, I mean, I've got horse manure all over my property, but it's not gonna kill off weed seeds unless you've got it in a composting pile with a tarp over it.
yeah.
And it's,
Cooking.
doing its thing.
I also just think like horse manure, maybe just avoid it because it's very more likely than not has a lot of weed seeds in it. So, yeah. Okay, group 4. So during the summer, this gardener's plants have grown big and beautiful with full lush leaves, but no fruits. At this time, they should be seeing fruit. They don't see any signs of pest or disease. The plants look healthy despite not producing any fruit. The garden is located in the middle of their grass lawn and there are not any other flowering plants nearby. The area has experienced several weeks of hot weather with temps regularly getting over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. There has been little rain, though the gardener is watering regularly. The soil is made of heavy clay and they are not using any mulch or landscape fabric. What are potential problems and solutions? What'd you guys come up with?
The soil is lacking organic matter and fertilizer, and there's an imbalance of NPK. They should mulch the soil, and there was some other point I missed. And they should grow flowers next to the plants for pollination.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Would you?
Yeah, that was actually good spot. I didn't think of the pollinators. That was their first thought. My first thought was also just soil remediation, which takes more than you can do in one season. You know, piling it up with organic matter.
Yeah.
Cover crops, mulching, peat litter, compost, things like that. Getting clay to penetrate the peat better. Like you were talking about the clay busting, cover crops, dicoms, things like that, right? It's just,
Yeah,
get some good dirt on it.
cool. Yeah. So the problem is high temperatures sometimes it causes flowers to dry up. And so if flowers are drying up, then they can't be pollinated and fruit can't produce off of those plants. It's also increasing the soil temperature. So that can be inhospitable for some plants that they don't want to flower because it's so hot. And their roots are hot. And another thing is the pollinators. Yeah, if you don't have pollinators in your garden, then they're not going to pollinate the flowers and you're not going to have fruit from your garden. So heavy mulching, organic matter, always good. I would even recommend adding some drip irrigation under some heavy mulching to help keep it cool, help get that water in a good way. We haven't talked about this a whole lot, but shade cloth could also help. That is like a slightly dark material that still lets sunlight penetrate that you can put over your crops that will just help lower the temps a little bit for your crops if you're finding they're really struggling with the heat. But yeah, seems great. And then we didn't have a group 5 in person, but I walked by their group and they were like, oh, we're done. And I was like, here you go. You want another scenario? So we'll do that really quick.
Yeah.
So
I felt like this was an easier one.
yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I tried to make them like equal, but we'll see. So this garden is in its 3rd year of production. Their plants grew really well the first year and they have continued to plant their crops in the same spots year to year. Midway through the summer of the 2nd and 3rd years, the gardener notices that leaves on their tomato plants are wilting, yellowed, and in some cases completely dead. The leaves are dying from the bottom up, starting with the leaves that have direct contact with the soil. Watering does not help, and the problem is definitely worse this year than last year as the plants are getting sick earlier in the year. What are potential problems and solutions?
So potential problems, we think disease. They've planted in the same spot over and over, and that can create problems that are in the soil that are going to affect every plant that goes into that soil. We think the soil may also be depleted from having that same repetitive planting. And also they say that their leaves are touching in direct contact with the soil. So they're not mulching and they're not trimming off any of their bottom leaves, right?
Yeah.
So we feel like you need to mulch and trim the bottom leaves of your plant so that the dirt is not splashing up onto the leaves. That you need to rotate your crop, plant them someplace else next time around, and that you should probably cover crop to try to restore the soil in that place over time.
Great. Online group 5, do you guys have anything to add?
I was pretty sure it's fungal based on the leaves being touching the soil. And so, well, maybe the only other different solution would be, you could use the antifungal spray and then maybe try watering without wetting the leaves. Maybe there's not enough airflow between the plants. Yeah, also plant spacing, but then watering so you're not wetting the leaves.
Yeah. So reminder on fungicide. What does fungicide not do?
Treat.
Prevent.
Existing.
Prevents. So once you see a disease crop up, it's not going to do anything against it, but you could spray it preventatively and it would help. Yeah, it is soil-borne disease. They are planting in the same spot every year. They need to rotate their crops. Bonus points, but actually you don't get anything for knowing this. But what's the disease?
Bacterial wilt.
Verticulum wilt.
I didn't know. I thought it was cereal. That one's tough.
Yeah. But yeah. So, we'll talk a little bit about crop rotation at the next session, but it is really good if you can find some good crop rotation plants. Some are more susceptible, but tomatoes are especially highly susceptible to disease in the soil. So you want to make sure that you are rotating. Wow, that was rotating. I don't know. So yeah, rotating your stuff. I'd also add, you're on a regular spraying schedule to kind of prevent disease and pests. Sometimes pests can spread disease like wilt and cucumbers, things like that. You want to make sure that you're pulling out your infected crops to make sure it doesn't spread. Pruning off bottom leaves. We talked about airflow. You guys got that stuff. I would also recommend selecting seed varieties that have a strong resistance to these types of diseases, and they're bred to resist them. So we tend to give out varieties that are already that way, but when you go off and spread your wings from the Build It Up program, look for disease and sometimes pest resistant varieties to plant in your gardens.
One more thing would be washing the tools.
Washing your tools regularly, also a great point. Yes, because if we don't wash our tools regularly, what happens?
Crop contaminated.
We can spread it throughout our garden. Yeah, so wash, and same goes for hands. If you're using your hands, make sure you're washing, sanitizing your hands in between. Yeah, all great. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? I do have there is more presentation on this. I was just planning to send it out afterwards and you could review the 5 principles of soil health. But yeah, does anybody have any questions before we depart?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you're, let's say, picking a new spot for your tomato plants every year, and it's a small garden, so you only have so many places you could put it. So I grew my tomatoes over here last year, and this year I'm growing them over here. Is next year like too early to just switch back to this one? I've only have 2 spots. Can I just go back and forth every year?
Ideally, you're putting about 3 years in between where you last planted. So you're doing it on a 3 to 4 year rotation. But if you can split up your beds so that maybe you grow your tomatoes over on this half of the bed and then you switch them to this over here. You could do a 3 to 4 year rotation like within your beds, just not planting them in the exact same spot. So that could be an option. Or take a break from growing tomatoes.
Then you have to grow less tomatoes. Maybe.
Yes, or that too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's never.
Get a bigger garden space.
There you go. That's the answer. And I'm surprised you didn't come up with that, Bethany. Every time Bethany comes to garden visits and she's like, wow, your garden looks really good. You know what would make it better? If it was bigger. You should double your garden size.
It's bigger next year. That is my advice. Yes. I mean, I've dug up the yard at this point.
Yeah. Honestly, you have. And I did want to make a note that I have really, really enjoyed seeing everybody's gardens this year. It's been so heartwarming and everybody's doing an amazing job, like so cool. And we still have 6 this week. So we'll be finishing them up this week, but it's been really a privilege to like see all the, like, I'm going to get emotional. It's been a privilege to see all of the amazing like stuff you're growing, and it's like the highlight of my year. So
You're here.
thank you guys.
Thank you. You have time for one more quick question?
Yeah.
So I had a bunch of onions. I've harvested all of the onions that came to fruition and ate them already. So there weren't many, but I have tons that are still this big. Should I replant them in the fall? I'm moving some spaces around. Should I dry them out and wait till the spring? What do you recommend?
Have their necks broken?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were time to come out of the ground.
Yeah. I don't know that I've quite figured out onions yet. Sometimes they grow great and sometimes they don't. And I think there's just a lot of factors that go into it. We also experimented with sets this year, which we don't normally hand out because Chris was like he was struggling with starting the like plant starts. So we might go back to plant starts next year because I think they work a little bit better. So that could also be a reason why they didn't get very big. It's just sets instead of, which are like the seed rolls instead of like the actual plants.
So can I cure the ones that I have left? Like let them sit, like right now I've kind of got them in a windowsill, just
yeah, I mean, you can let them
and then maybe try to plant them again in the spring.
I
mean, I know they're edible at any stage, right? I mean, most of them are at least the size of a shallot.
I probably wouldn't replant them just because you can't guarantee that they're like disease free.
Okay.
Whereas like when we get stuff new every year, it's like certified that it's like doesn't have the bad stuff in it. The same with like seed potatoes, things like that. That being said, you're always welcome to trial anything you want.
They might just bolt too, like they might go to seed
They could go
right
to
away.
seed, yeah.
Like the 3rd year.
Gotcha.
So building on her question, sets versus the little starts, what's a good way to start onion, shallot, leek from seed?
So you're talking about the actual like plant starting?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Chris
They're so
does them,
tiny.
right,
Mhm.
Chris does them in 128 cell plant start trays.
Okay.
Is that like the teeny tiny?
Yeah, they're like
sized one?
they're like this big.
Yeah, okay.
And that seems to do well, but I will say you should plant way more than you want because sometimes they have germination issues.
Okay.
And we find that with leeks as well, have like kind of low germination rates a lot of times. So plant will like a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that subject, like if you're planting the onion seed, it grows the little onion plant. But that's like its first year. Is it gonna grow an onion that year? Or
It will grow an onion I shouldn't say it will definitely.
Because like the sets are
The
like
sets are like a
1-year-old.
second year. Yeah, they're like, it's a whole thing. But the sets that we gave out this year are technically their second growth year. So in an ideal world, they would create a bigger bulb. And then the ones that you grow from seed that you have the plants are like their first growth year. I don't know why they don't produce bulbs all the time. Like, I think it's probably a lot of different types of soils that people are growing in. I've done research on it and there's so many different
So
answers out there.
Yeah.
We have had, I think, better luck with growing them from seed and handing out the plant
The baby
starts, the
plants.
baby plants than we did
Were those
this year.
like freshly from seed? So that was their
Yes.
first year?
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So
Okay,
that
you
might be
can
better.
get a big one from a first year.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's what we normally hand out.
Last year, yeah, they got
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That
I
was the
think we'll
first
do
year
that
thing.
again. So I think the sets are just like not as good. And so we're just gonna do the plants now.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Can you broadcast those? Cause I have a ton and just to kind of go.
Yeah, totally. You can try it out.
Just try
And
it.
maybe they'll like the fall better.
Put some mulch on top.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up here. So, thank you all for joining on Zoom. And I will be sending out the recording and
Make it that way.
excellent. And come to your plant pickup.
Uh,